about Ready, Jet, Set, Go. Here at Ready, Jet, Set, Go, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in travels. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and master neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. And obviously, if there are some circumstances that happens in your travel, like we want to address that. Like, you know, maybe you have had fears related to like being in a foreign country, or maybe being on a plane. Sometimes things happen, and sometimes like you lost your wallet, or you lost your passport, or you have been detained. Sometimes, like, you know, we cannot stop things from happening, but things do happen, so we have to be prepared. So our guest tonight is somebody who I actually meet often in another organization, and he is actually an entrepreneur, and he just like me, he likes eating and traveling. So
true.
His name is Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
Hi, Lorii. It's great to be here.
Great to see you. So what you call that? Have you actually like done any traveling recently?
Well, right around this time a year ago, I did go to Croatia with my girlfriend for 2 weeks. It was the time where I was switching my job from a corporate, full-time job to my startup. And between that, we went to Croatia for 2 weeks and had one of the coolest experiences. Other than that, just traveling within the States, but looking to go somewhere south, maybe to Central America, hopefully in the winter time when it's cold in Chicago and warmer over there.
So where was the first travel you had?
Well, I'm originally from Arizona, so I don't know if you would consider this traveling, but Tucson, Arizona is only 40 minutes from the border of Mexico. Oh. So I wouldn't have been, I'm trying to think back where that might have been one of the first places, just because it's so close. And my parents would like to go to Nogales, Mexico, to get a number of like different things. But yeah, so that was one place. I also, when I was younger, went to visit my extended family in Italy, because my mom is originally from Italy. So most of my mother's side of the family is still in middle and southern parts of Italy. And I've also been to Israel and quite a few places.
Okay, all right. Now you made me think like, okay, you've been crossing the border regularly, okay, before, and you were still young. And so like, maybe it's cheaper over there. That's the reason why you would say your mom will be going there.
Yeah, we would sometimes get jewelry. So you can get jewelry, which is a lot, which was at that time less expensive to get there. I don't know why, but so sometimes we would get some like snacks or food, or just go somewhere, it feels international, even though it's only 40 minutes away. It feels like you're in a different area. But I would also go to deeper parts of Mexico, sailing in San Carlos and scuba diving in other parts of like the Baja Mexico area. The closest body of water from Tucson, Arizona is not California. It's actually Baja, part of Mexico. So this Rocky Point town, the town is called Rocky Point, and it's like it's only a few hours drive from Tucson to get to the ocean there, whereas San Diego is actually a little bit further.
Ah, okay, yeah, because I was supposed to ask about that, like, San Diego is connected to Tijuana, and so it's just crossing the border as well. But I'm just wondering, are there a lot of people who spoke Spanish in Arizona? Because like no clue.
Yeah, and I was actually just in Miami last week, and the taxi driver received me in Spanish, and there was a few instances where like Spanish was the starting language, and Tucson is not far from that, where if you don't speak any Spanish in Tucson, like something's wrong with you. Like you should be able to at least know a few words. But my stepmom is actually originally born in Mexico and then raised in the U.S. From being a child. But so I would say that the Spanish and Latin influence was always a part of my life.
Oh my God! And so like through the times that I have met you, like you were telling me that you were staying in China before. So what made you decide like, okay, this is the country that I'm gonna take a leave and be here?
Well, I didn't realize that I would stay for 6 years in China. My first year was just teaching English. I found a posting online. I actually wasn't even sure if it was going to be real, like very legitimate, because there's some work environments that are very relaxed there, and I felt like the guy that, or the group that hired me, they're very relaxed, so they were not very clear on a lot of details. I had to be the one that asked all these questions, which, coming from the U.S., having never been to Southeast Asia, like it was such a new experience for me, and I was like, how do I get to, when I land, how do I get there? How do I start getting some currency? How do I, or exchanging money? How do I set up an account? How do I call people? Where's the internet? Where's the grocery store? So all these things. And so I had to figure it all out on my own. But it was really just this amazing experience. But when I first got to the apartment where they, provide you, I wasn't even sure, the lights in the hallway weren't really working, and it just was very dark, and the electricity in my room wasn't turned on. So I wasn't sure if I was going to start my job teaching English in China, or if I was about to be kidnapped. It was one of the two options. Luckily, I taught English in China, and there was no issues. It was just a blackout or issue with the power. But so I had this, but it was just so many new experiences there. But I ended up staying for a year as a teacher, and then switched into a few other roles, working more in sales. One, in the healthcare type area, and then one more about studying abroad in Europe for Chinese students. So total 6 years, and then I did a food side hustle, as I told you about. So I think I didn't want to stay as a teacher. I wanted to try to figure out some sort of more business type of position for myself, and got to explore all that, but ultimately moved back to the U.S.
So how did you do that? You were there as supposed to be a teacher. How did you move from one company to another company? I have no idea what is the visa situation.
Yeah, so the visa situation does make you have to leave the country to come back into the country under the new work visa for the new employer. So I did have to go to Hong Kong several times because of this reason. Hong Kong is where you exit technically and come back in. But I found the new job after being a teacher through a expat-oriented Craigslist called The Beijinger. So I lived in Beijing, and it was called The Beijinger. And so it gave you tips on where to eat, where to travel, jobs. It's just they try to be a site for everything an international person might need.
Wow, that's amazing. And so how is it teaching English?
Teaching English was really cool. They said that it was going to be kindergarten kids, but it was more like preschool. The kids were 2 years old, and it was very cute. It was very fun, and you're basically just running around, playing with kids all day. It was actually really nice. I just didn't want to have this as my future forever. I can enjoy it. The day-to-day was amazing. I don't think I needed to go to a gym because I was just running around playing with kids, and it was a really good time. And I would teach them basic conversation. So I would speak to them during the day in English, have them practice, words, numbers, colors, and then when they would go home after 5 o'clock, they would speak Chinese at their home with their family. So they wanted the parents sent their kids there for a bilingual experience.
Okay, so do you have to understand them just in case that they cannot express themselves in English?
Yeah, so the more Chinese I learned while I was living in China, the better my life was, partially, in part with my job, communicating to the kids, because Sometimes they're children, so it's hard for them to listen to you all the time.
Yeah.
And then also just living my day-to-day life. So if I was in a taxi, I need to direct them, go left, go right, go straight. Or if I'm at a restaurant, how to order food. Does this have such and such? I don't like cilantro, and there might be cilantro in there. Or they might use different parts of the animal that I don't really want to eat. So good to ask questions in advance.
Okay. You didn't eat ants and spiders over there?
No ants and spiders, no. Other things, there was one outdoor like street cooking type place that had butterfly larvae, which are these like little tube things, and then they fry them. And honestly, once you fry something, it just tastes like popcorn / chicken. So it wasn't terrible, but yeah, they have some interesting things that you can eat there for sure.
All right, got it. So how did you handle the cultural differences while living there?
The cultural difference, I think it was more of an opportunity to just learn and absorb, because China, is a developing country in a lot of ways and quite developed in a lot of other ways, or in different places geographically, depending on where you are. So I think that there are easy learning opportunities, and then there's some like that are more interesting or complicated. It's kind of like an onion. You're peeling through the different layers of the culture. So, for example, a lot of business deals don't always happen in like a boardroom where one person agrees, the other person agrees, they sign a paper. And in the US, it's like that, very transactional, very dry. But in China, it's a lot more relationship based. And so like a deal is not necessarily done until you've gone to dinner, before you've maybe had some karaoke, like time together, drinks. And when you're really like in that kind of environment, much more personal environment, they feel like this is how they can really judge your character. And if they really, if everything kind of goes well in these experiences, then there's a good chance that we're going to be able to work together. But but if you're trying to do a quick transaction early on, you might not get anywhere. And so there's a lot of people that I think have done or try to do international businesses where they partner with a Chinese company, and they think that everything is working until something definitely stops working. And I think I got to kind of peek under the hood and see that from a business perspective. Relationship, like family relationship, personal, they love giving each other gifts. So if you go to a friend's home, like people bring gifts to each other's homes here, but it's so much more important there, and not just in a simple paper bag, but in a beautifully wrapped, decorative type box. They love the color red. So just, kind of learning about about their culture through the day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. And so did you actually bring that home, like whatever you've learned as far as like, transactional and, being with a community?
I think it helped. I think it gave me an extra lens of how to see life through how I saw life there, and then applied some of that perspective to my life here. But the culture here is also quite different in some ways, and so I kind of take a hybrid approach in terms of some of their perspective and some of the perspective that you would normally, kind of grow up with here. And so but the interesting thing is I moved to China right after college, and so aside from some internships, my real full-time work experience after college was started in China. Wow. And for 6 years. And so when I moved to the US, when I moved to Chicago, there was a little bit of a learning process, a learning curve. And I think that's interesting, that's different. But having lived here for, last 7 years, I feel like I've pretty much acclimated to how everything gets done, you know.
So from Arizona, your parents moved here too. Is that what you're saying?
No, they're still in Arizona.
Oh, I thought they're here.
I wanted to move to Chicago for a few reasons. One being, you know, I got used to living in a large urban city.
Yeah.
So Beijing has about 20 million people, and that's not even the biggest city. Like Shanghai has more, like 30, and Chongqing has 40. It's just massive numbers. So, you know, I liked the urban environment. I liked the fast-paced component of China. You know, Tucson, Arizona, where I'm from, is a great place to retire, but it's actually a foodie place. There's so many great restaurants, but there's not a lot of business, not a lot of industry outside of food and the university, for the most part. And so there was a job opportunity with International Logistics, the company DHL, here in Chicago. So that's kind of how I moved here, was through working with DHL, and then I switched more into a digital marketing role with the company I stayed with for about 5.5 years, Equity Residential, and then from there I transitioned to what I do now.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's a lot of
It's a lot.
you know, moving. And so, like, you know,
It
I
is.
like the idea though, because like you pick up what you learn and then like apply it. And so obviously
Yep.
there is nothing much in going in Arizona, but you have picked up values over there too. Like, you know, that's more or less suburban values that you have over there, because like it's not as big as here.
And environmental values too, because Tucson and Arizona in the Southwest, you know, water is a big issue, a big concern. It impacts your day-to-day life in a lot of ways. And so, you know, when I was looking at starting my business, I was keeping in mind the water, you know, conservation or the sustainability of creating my product, because most of the water, fresh water in the U.S., is actually being allocated towards livestock, towards animal feed. So cows, for example, eat a lot of alfalfa grass, and more than half of our fresh water in the U.S. goes towards raising feed for animals.
Mm-hmm.
And living in Arizona, I really understand when things dry up, they dry up, and there are certain homes in Arizona that are so far away from water, like piping, like they can't get the water up to these homes in certain areas, that there's just no more water in homes, which is pretty scary to think about, but it could be more prevalent in the future.
I was thinking if you're gonna go to Mexico to go take a shower, just in case there's no water in Arizona.
I can go swimming in the ocean. It's just a 3-hour drive.
All right, okay. So, was there any significant experience that you had that, you know, didn't go as planned when you were living in China?
I don't know. I think my personality is just to roll with whatever comes my way. It didn't go as planned. I wasn't, you know, sure like if I wanted to stay in China, but I think that was like the one thing I was really thinking about in terms of my future. Do I want to be here for 5 years, for 10 years? So, you know, I could have stayed longer, you know, so that's something that's hard, you know, that's difficult to plan for when when you're living abroad, is how long do you actually spend? Because the time you're there, you're actually giving up time somewhere else. And so I guess I wasn't planning on being there for 5 years, but you know, that was something that changed. But I would say that most of the things that happened in my life there was all quite intentional, because you basically make what what you want your life to be. Mm-hmm. Especially as an expat, like you have more of a specific thing of what you can do. I did try to interview with a number of other companies that needed excellent Mandarin writing and reading abilities, which I don't have an expert ability for. So that kind of limited some of my options. So yeah, you kind of carve out the life you want, but you still have a limited opportunity.
So are you saying that there were Americans who were living there who writes and reads?
Yeah, one of my friends, David, he's actually in a Chinese band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's musically very inclined, and he speaks fluent Chinese. There are different tests that you can do to show that you have a certain proficiency. I've never even attempted any of these tests. So there's like a 1, a 2, a 5. I think 5 was a really high level, review that you're pretty much fluent at that point. I think Chinese, like it's all character based. So how many characters do you know? Because I think there might be some crazy number, like 60,000 characters. And most Chinese people only know 10,000, or I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think I knew maybe a couple hundred.
So is David still there?
Yeah, he's still there. I have a friend, John, who he worked with me, and so he's one of my longest standing friends there, originally from the Philippines. Really nice guy, and so he's still in Beijing. He has a food business, but I have a few friends that are no longer there as well.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine those people who were teaching English, they would rather try it also in other countries, because I met one time, I was in London, I met a guy who's an English teacher, and he was in China, but he was visiting London then, and then he said that he also has he moved to Spain actually. So I think
still
it's a
teaching though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a privilege. Once you get the ball rolling, okay, teach English, but it's also a decision that you have to make. Is this something that I want to keep on doing, for a while?
I would almost look at it like that job, like a traveling nurse, in the sense that if you want to teach English, and if you're talented, if you're a good teacher, then there's a lot of places around the world that you would be able to teach at, similar to a traveling nurse could work at a number of different hospitals.
Yeah, I have to ask this because I met a couple of ladies, they're American ladies, and then once they went to China together with their husband, they came back here in the United States by themselves. They have to be divorced because their husband was wooed by women,
lured by people.
And so
were they working there? I mean, it wasn't
they were working there,
okay.
And so the women just actually like the American man.
I think that's unfortunate for the couples.
Yeah.
I did not go to China, in a relationship, so I can't really compare. I think there's a lot of social and fun activities like karaoke or these hot pot communal things. So there's a lot of things that you could be doing with a group of people. So maybe that leads to more just connecting with new people, more interactions. I think that when you're not from that country, you can be a bit more exotic. So not just American, but if British or Australian, people from all these different countries are considered. The funny thing is there's just a term for foreigner.
Oh, yeah?
And they just kind of label everyone under that term for the most part, which is a casual way of calling a foreigner is a Laowai. And so you're all put in the same category as being a Laowai.
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. In my language, Laowai means saliva. Because it's interesting as well, because I met another teacher in English, and then she's a woman, but she said it's difficult for a woman to actually befriend a guy over in China. So they're not really picked by men.
I think, or the guys are more are shy.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think there's less individuals that go I think there might be some more guys that go to China, to teach or do something, because a bit more than the number of women.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it could be certainly a different experience depending on which gender, also which city you are in, because if you're in a very small town where no one speaks English or speaks your language, then you're going to have a hard time making friends and meeting new people, no matter which gender you are. But if you're in a big city, you can meet a lot more. And like if you're in Shanghai, there's 1 million foreigners living in Shanghai.
I didn't know that.
So there are a lot. It's more of a metropolitan city.
Yeah.
So I would say that a lot of international people who do move to China, especially if it's a lady, I think Shanghai might be a really good place because it's just more of a appealing environment.
Okay, and so how did you adjust with the washroom?
Oh, the squatting toilets?
Yeah.
It took me a little time to figure out the process. It did not come intuitively, in the beginning. And but it's kind of funny because I think that it gives you a lot more leg strength.
Okay, that's the plus over there. Okay.
Which keeps you limber. So I feel like people who are who might be doing that same posture when they're older probably benefit by that. And I think that there are people that went on like Shark Tank with a type of device that you step on so that even a Western toilet can mirror the same thing as a squatty.
Oh, interesting.
Because they think that it's better for your body, for your health and whatnot. So yes, it was, but that's more like in public areas in more rural environments. But if you're in a high-end shopping mall in Beijing, it's going to be more a Western toilet. Sometimes they also have 2 options, so you can choose which one you want. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I have to ask that because when I was traveling in Beijing together with my husband, and so the bus will stop somewhere else, and then okay, this is the nearest washroom, and then my husband went there, and then oh my God, I saw somebody reading the newspaper but squatting over there.
Yes, that's what, and they might have a cigarette, during the whole process. It's a very common thing. Yes.
So, given an opportunity, would you go back to China?
To visit, yeah.
To visit and then to leave, no?
I mean, right now, it seems like there's so much craziness happening in the world that I'm not sure about, if there's another COVID situation. I think that the difficulties for COVID there probably were a lot, were significant. So, my friend John, who lived there, they do, during the peak, you were basically boarded in your home, you couldn't leave your home, people, unless you, so it was I think it was very difficult. And yeah, and then there's the political climate. So I don't really know if I would want to live there, maybe under the right job in the right city. There's some coastal towns that are just very relaxing. So there's some very, very beautiful areas of China. And if you have a good salary, then life is great. But to just travel, definitely. I think it's a really cool place. I love the natural areas that they have. The big mountain ranges are very, very special. Yeah, it's a big country.
Yeah. So, how did you feel about the cost of living as compared to here? Because you were living in Beijing. It's not really necessarily Shanghai.
I think what I would compare the difference to, because there was plenty of expensive things there, just like there are here. But if you want inexpensive things, I think there was a bit more options for inexpensive things there compared to here. But you also get the amenities clean drinking water, and so there's it's a trade-off. But I would say that the cost of living and rent was definitely a little bit less expensive there. Also partly because there's so many high rises. So, you know, buildings that are 20, 30 stories, they're everywhere. Whereas in like Chicago, it's mostly like 4 or 5 story, you know, 3 or 4 stories make up the majority of Chicago. So yeah, there's, and I used to drive a motorcycle or a motor scooter. Before a motorcycle, I drove a Vespa kind of thing. And so I didn't really rely on the subway system, which was pretty good, but I just didn't want to be crammed like cattle all the time. People. So, and I liked driving, and I could get somewhere so fast on a scooter. And so I also got to find places that were a little bit further away from public transportation, which then also made the, you know, the rental price not as high.
Oh.
So that was kind of a benefit.
Okay, so aside from the community and as well as the relationship, so is there anything else that, you know, you will say like, okay, that is one of the things that I like about the Chinese?
Or about living in China?
Yeah, like it can be anything, like, you know, it can be also related to the people themselves.
I like that they're open-minded, like they're willing to try, you know, things differently or new ideas. If you express something, like they're curious. I'd say that they're curious. They value education a lot. I think that's nice. They value family. Like you see basically no homeless people. There are people that, you know, relatives, maybe someone's aunt or grandparents, they may not like each other, but they still have a duty to live, you know, together to support your elders. So you really, you know, somebody usually catches you, helps you, may not love you, but like you don't see people on the street, and there's no guns. So I've never felt safer in my life than I did in China. Oh. And the police officers are not intimidating at all. They actually resemble more like a mall security police or mall security cop, where there's no gun, you know, and when they go to deal with disputes, it's usually like a civil rivalry, and or some sort of issue, and they're basically like counselors. They just want to help calm situations, but because there's no guns, then there's no like real serious sad situations happening all the time. Like it's all just down, you know, just calmer there in that way. So I like that.
Okay, all right. So like, I don't want to be so political, but are you neutral as far as like, you know, whatever they're portraying China here in the United States?
I think that there's definitely a tone that American media likes to create.
Oh, okay.
But in terms of who's right, who's wrong, who's instigating what, who do you have to look out for, I honestly don't even know. You know, I think that it's, in my experience, I feel like China is not a very aggressive, like to other countries. Maybe what they do internally to their own people, like that is another thing, but is internationally, like I don't see them wanting to be so aggressive, but I don't have any military
That's true.
experience.
Yeah, I have another friend in the Philippines. Like, you know, it's always a contest. Like certain areas of the Philippines is being, you know, said that, oh, okay, this belongs to China, this belongs to the Philippines. But
the territory is because it's for resources, it's for fishing rights. That's I have no idea how governments work that out.
Yeah. Because like, as I was saying, my friend, he said that, you know, China is not doing anything in order to be aggressive with us. Like they're never like.
They want to create like an island. They'll create islands. Like I think they're the kind that like to rule with a pen and not a sword.
Okay.
So if they like to invest in invest in countries, invest in, you know, groups, and so there's an influence, but they don't want to, you know, use guns and bombs and all of that. I don't think that's what they're really trying to focus on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you travel so many places. So if you can pick one country, is there something that you will say like, oh, this is my favorite country?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's just so many interesting places. One thing I really liked about traveling and living in Southeast Asia was the fruit.
Ah!
The fruit options are so good, like mangosteen. I don't know if you've ever tried that one. There's passion fruit. There's dragon fruit, but not just the white one, but the one that's more red color inside. And then when I was in southern China near Vietnam, there was one called egg fruit, which when you bite into it, it almost has the same consistency of like the yellow hard-boiled egg, like yolky texture. It was the most bizarre, but then like I was freaked out by it at first, and then I was in love with it later. But I would say like I really enjoyed my trip to Cambodia.
Oh.
That one was really cool. That one was very special, just being in the temples, because the temples were not roped off. They were totally available for you to explore and experience. And the trees there, these big, I forget the name of the type of tree, but they're some of the largest trees in the world, and you just look up and it just looks so massive. So I just thought that was a really cool, special place.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think like I include Cambodia in my wish list.
Yeah, the food.
I've never thought about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like Thailand. It's right next to Thailand. But Thailand has been touristy for a much longer period compared to Cambodia. But I had a wonderful time there. Croatia was amazing. So yeah, I'm not sure where I'll go next, but I'm excited.
Oh my God. Okay, great. That's great. So thank you so much for being over here, Jonathan. And then like for those people who are watching, if you are actually professional in the travel industry, and if you are actually a person who loves to travel and would like to share any experience that you've had wherein like, things didn't work out as planned, so just give me a holler. I would like to have you over here. And then again, thank you so much for being here, Jonathan. I appreciate your time. And then like we'll see you soon.
See you.